laugh, grin me a grin, and then I know that we can win. Dance me a dance, joke me a joke, and blow the clouds away. You gotta play me a tune, or sing me a song, and we can help push life along. Just you and me, come on and see, together we'll be okay. Open the door, open your heart, and then we've got somewhere to start. Just turn around, look what we found. Today's a brand new day. You gotta run with me now, I'll show you how. The world is waiting, take a bow. Show them it's you, what you can do. Together we two can win. A rock on Tommy, dance to a tune that this guitar sings. A rock on Tommy, just get up and spread your wings. Spread your wings, follow me through into the sun, and we can smile at everyone. You gotta join in with me, then we are free. It isn't hard to do. I said life is a song, so just sing along, and then we know we can't go wrong. Just you and me, come on and sing. Together we'll be okay. Together we'll be okay.
Look at this fancy fade in. Oh, here we go. Hello everybody for this impromptu stream. It's just two of us, I'm afraid, this week. Cookie has had a bit of an accident, and he's in hospital. He was impaled by a spear of frozen urine from an aeroplane bathroom, which is rare, but does happen apparently.
Very sad.
So if you could send your well wishes to him, I think he'll be fine. But how can you tell in today's world? So there was a benefit after all for all those airplanes being grounded during COVID. So John, if you would like to introduce today's format.
Of course, yes. Welcome to an evening of Game Prov, where we will be having a go at creating very new games before your very eyes. And why, you might ask, are we doing that? Well, some of you may not know that we are, in fact, game designers. I've invented and developed and created a game called Crystal Hall, which is above my finger there. And myself and Peter are currently working on a new game called Earthen War, which involves these rather delightful ceramic golem pieces, battling it out on the battlefields of the First World War, and controlled by magical symbols in a very original way. So there'll be more to say about that at a later point, but yes, we design games, and tonight we're going to prove it by doing it live on air. And we've got a few tricks to show you about how it's done. So Peter is going to be co-designing with me, and we may or may not be presenting in a Dungeons and Dragons Den style pitching session later on to Hannah, producer Hannah, who you may know from the show, who can judge whether our creation is actually any good. Yeah, any opening thoughts, Peter? How are you feeling?
I think we'll probably just go straight into it. So we've developed a Ludim engine.
Indeed.
To provide us with game elements. We'll mix those together, and we'll hopefully come up with a marketable board game, which we will then be looking for investment. And next week's show, maybe we'll be phoning up board game companies live and asking for some money.
How about Donald Trump? He's not doing much these days.
Yeah.
Some money. People send him money, so they might send it from him to us.
Fine, we'll get a list of rich people like him.
Bill Gates.
William Gates, yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Musk.
Mm-hmm.
And Jeff
Bezos.
Bridges and Bezos. Let's switch over to the whiteboard. Let's give this a go.
Actually, before we do the whiteboard, perhaps we take a look at the under the bonnet at the Ludim generator. Maybe I can share my screen and
you can share your screen now.
Talk the viewers through all of our trade secrets so that we lose all value in the trade secrets immediately.
It has gone black here. I'm not sure why.
Might take a minute to load. Can I check if you can see my screen?
There we go.
All good?
Right, yep. Can see.
Okay, so
Auction and bidding on some fish.
welcome to
That's what I like.
Lazy Poet Game Maker. So what we have here is an example game that's generated, and I'll show you the real secret source. On the right-hand side, we have a list of
Secret source.
Ludeems. Secret source is not a Ludeem, but I'm sure there is one yet to be made. There is a list of very badly kind of formatted here themes and some even better Ludeems developed by our very own Peter, who he sent over beforehand. So we've got some more generic Ludeems, some quite spicy Ludeems from Peter, and some themes as well. So
Spicy Ludeems is my wrestler name.
Brilliant. I actually want to just take a moment before I press anything to just admire this randomized one that came up beforehand, because this is really great and it'll help introduce how we might explore these. So we've got modular board, so a board made up of different bits that you put together. Auctioning and bidding, so a bit like a Monopoly where you might bid for one of the properties in fish, not ocean, inside fish, whatever that means. And there's some bonus rules which are clean up. One player controls black goo spreading over the board, so maybe it's something spreading inside the fish. Other players cleans up by attacking. Goo can spread to nearby square by falling, i.e. making a pile of 4 goo.
So I think the idea there was you made a pile of, you'd make a pile and the pile would fall over and you'd move like 4 spaces that way by spreading out into a line. Like a vertical Tetris block sort of falling on its side almost.
Very, very elegant Ludeem there, as spicy as we'd hoped for from Peter. So I think with this theme, what I'm seeing is a fish with maybe different kind of diseases, maybe competing for control.
Yeah.
And maybe they kind of auction for the right to go in certain directions or
like
something.
Maybe the immune system of the fish. Do fishes have immune systems? They must do.
We can only presume.
Against the sort of maybe an oil based
That's good. Environmental.
disease, something like that.
Very
The whole game takes place in the tiniest of minnows or something like that.
Yeah. That's good.
So that would be the example one. Annoyingly
Yes,
good, but we can't use that.
Annoyingly high bar example, but yeah, I think we should probably try and have a fair stab at each one, and not kind of just browse too much. I think it's part of the appeal is going to be in forcing ourselves to work with something really weird. So
yeah, so I think maybe we get a few rolls, and then we'll have to land on one of the next 3, I guess.
Okay, let's allow ourselves 3 rolls.
Just in case they're sort of unusable. But it might be the first one that's the best, you never know.
Okay, so I just need to go to the Calculate Now button in Excel.
This is what Twitch should be. There should be more Excel on Twitch. Less Call of Duty, more learning how to use Excel.
So Calculate Now. Okay. We have pattern building and area impulse in alchemy with bonus rules nuclear Gandhi. Never before have these ideas been combined in the history of mankind. Let's walk this through. What are your initial thoughts, Peter?
So let's go through what nuclear Gandhi is. So that's players are given a characteristic they must abide by while playing. So do you want to make that grid, the square, a little bigger so you can see the rest of the text?
Let's up our font size so that the viewers can see.
I mean, make this. Yeah, there we go. So players are given a characteristic they must abide by while playing. For example, one player would be given the characteristic where they have to take revenge if somebody attacks them, or they have a nemesis. Perhaps they must always attack if they can. Taken from Civilization, where Gandhi was famously tempted to use nuclear bombs quite a lot.
It's a bit of an urban myth, that one. So supposedly he had a sort of anger rating which was incredibly low because he was so peaceful and it was all about kind of passive protest. And supposedly if you made him even more peaceful by giving him a gift or something, he would go from 0 to 99 or something. So the legend goes. Sadly, it's not actually true, but it's such a kind of myth that I don't know, it's almost not worth debunking because it's such a nice story.
But it doesn't exist in the game, does it? It's not the myth isn't that it's an error. The myth is that it doesn't exist at all as a phenomenon. I think, but it's just that people see Gandhi using nuclear bombs normally, like, and then assume he's being super violent. I think I'm not sure.
Perhaps.
But
Yeah. This
so-
idea of prescribing kind of behaviors to players is an interesting one, because so often we give agency to players to do things how they want, but to force a role on them could be quite fun. A little bit like some role-playing games, maybe Werewolves, where you have some goodies and baddies.
yeah, or at its simplest, just like when you're playing checkers, and if you have to attack, if you can attack, you have to.
Nice. I always enjoyed playing Suicide Chest, where that was one of the rules, where you have to attack if you can, and you have to sacrifice all your pieces the first. But anyway, that's so that's our nuclear
So
Gandhi
what is
element.
pattern building? Is that
Pattern
just
building.
does it mean anything, or is it just do these mean things in board games, or
If they do, I'm gonna have to blag it, because
Okay,
I do
cool.
not know exactly what pattern building means.
area
I pres-
impulse?
Let's take a moment to just explore, just in case anyone else has different interpretations. I believe pattern building might be the sorts of things like, if it was an abstract game with different shapes, it might be you have to go square, triangle, and if you do, you get more points. A bit like Azul, perhaps, which we played, where you're rewarded for having, I guess, the opposite of patterns, like variety next to each other. So yeah, maybe we can build patterns. Area impulse, again, not too sure on what that means. So what
chair
could
just
it mean?
Sorry, keep going. I'm just pumping my chair up.
I'll take my own question. What could it mean? I'm not sure about impulse. So maybe it could go back to that behavior point about maybe people have a compulsion to go to a certain area. So maybe Peter is trying to go to the red squares, John's trying to go to the blue squares. There's an impulsion to go to certain areas. And the theme is alchemy. So
the obvious one is to go to like sigils, and there's a good PC game actually about alchemy where you have to arrange like a little engine with symbols that combine to make different elements, which go on. I don't remember what it's called, but it's good. So the impulse is to not do that and do like an abstract version of alchemy, which would be, I'm not sure. My impulse in this is to like find the first thing that comes into my head and then try and discard it and come up with like something annoyingly niche.
Well, that's good improv. Like
but for alchemy, it's quite hard because there's only pretty much that. Change stuff into gold, I guess, would be maybe combining elements to go up from whatever soil to sky or whatever it is.
My head went somewhere similar. So I was thinking periodic table could be a interesting board where that's all the squares, and maybe you've got an impulsion to maybe make compounds.
Go to the noble gases for 1 point.
Yeah. Maybe, yeah. I'm not quite sure. Like, there could be an interesting chemistry game where you've got to combine different elements or collect different elements. Maybe build a pattern in the form of an atom.
You could have compound. Maybe the atom is a side thing that you add electrons to, and protons and neutrons, etc. To go up the periodic table. And if you add too many protons without electrons, it will become unstable and attract them from elsewhere.
Yeah.
Again, that's quite a good idea for a board game. So it's annoying that this is.
Well, I mean, we don't have to discard this one just yet. Maybe we keep it in the bank.
Yeah. Maybe we look through three and then we'll pick hydrogen. One. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know, by the way, if I can go back. What happens if I press back? Yes. Oh no, we can't.
Let's just read it.
It's a completely different one.
Okay. Well, so, again.
Here we go.
We've got atoms, haven't we? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So this is a game with negotiation, action point allowance, set in Portugal with an owl maze. And I'm sorry, folks, I'm just going to have to make that a bit more visible. I'm going to hide those rows so we can. Oh, and we've accidentally randomized again.
We just changed. Oh no, you've done it again. Okay.
So one of the dangers of the Lazy Poet Game Maker is I've not done it in a very polished way. I've done it in the lazy poets way, where every cell that we have here is done with a formula, and whenever I interact with this again, so yeah, you have to stay on your feet with this. So we won't be exploring that Portugal one. We're now in a action point allowance one with negotiating in Malta with a labyrinth like.
I didn't know countries were in here. These are going to be very hard if it's a country we don't know anything about.
Yeah, I'm just gonna Google Malta on my other device and
Yeah.
see if I can
See,
tell you anything.
maybe we can get some
Interesting
information
facts.
about Malta. So,
Malta facts.
action point allowance system would be a certain number of points each turn. You'd maybe start with 4 points at the beginning of a turn, use those points to do stuff, and then at the beginning of your next turn, perhaps they would refill, or you'd perhaps get 3 per turn or something like that. Negotiating would be you presumably negotiating with other players. Like in Catan, where you're swapping sheep for wood, or perhaps negotiating with some sort of grid on built into the game somehow. Maybe you'd roll for the grumpiness of the bank manager, or maybe like in Deal or No Deal, the board would give you a like an offer that you could accept or reject. And then maybe you could re-roll the offer and it would go higher or lower depending on the personality of whoever you're negotiating with. Labyrinth tiles are laid like bricks, act like hexagons. So if you have a grid of squares like a chessboard, but if you shift over the rows so that they're laid out like bricks, they basically act like hexagons because each square has 6 other squares around it. Move 1 tile from the end of a row to the start, and you could either push all the rows along, push that row along, or not. Basically make the rows different sizes and stuff. Labyrinth is the one where you have like a maze on a grid, and you take 1 square from the end of one row, put it to the beginning, and shift them all over so it's still a square. But in this, you would not necessarily have to do that.
Ooh.
And Malta
I've got something on Malta. I've got a suggestion.
Okay.
So it's an island in it's an archipelago technically in the Mediterranean Sea between Sicily and North Africa, and I was wondering if we could do something to do with labyrinths and the Minotaur or Minotaur, and maybe something to do with negotiating there. So I know that I don't think the labyrinth was set in Malta, but I'm wondering if we use that kind of Mediterranean.
Yeah, I think
vibe.
with the countries we'll have to be a little bit lax because my geography is terrible. Not only my geography, my knowledge of other cultures is also terrible.
I'll see if I can say anything more.
It has numerous fortresses, megalithic temples, and the Halcyphliani Hypogeum, subterranean complex of halls and burial chambers dating to circa 4000 BC, which again, you could maybe use that subterranean complex of halls and burial chambers that move around in a sort of roguelike way.
Very cool architecture from the Wikipedia page. Lots of different influences, Arabs, Normans.
People also ask, is Malta a dangerous country? Generally, Malta is very safe to visit. Is reassuring.
Unless you go to the Minotaur land.
They have 2 official languages, Maltese and English. What about the Maltese falcon? That's a... I don't think either of us know enough about the Maltese falcon to use that as a... another question, does Malta smell? However, Malta is non-alcoholic. Oh, Malta the soft drink. There is a soft drink called Malta. A lightly carbonated malt beverage brewed from barley, hops and water, much like beer.
Lots of material here.
So yeah.
So in terms of how this game would work, here's my pitch. So you lay out the labyrinth. Somewhere on the board is the Minotaur. Let's say 2 to 4 players. They've each got, I think you said 3 action points per turn. On your turn, you can move the board, and in doing so, you might move the Minotaur, or maybe you can move the Minotaur, and you're trying to move the Minotaur towards your enemies and away from you, and you're trying to move yourself out of the way. But you've got to be careful because the walls are always changing, and it could quickly come back to haunt you. But maybe there's that negotiation element. So maybe there's also treasure in the labyrinth, and you can say to your friend, well, if I give you this gem, you can move the Minotaur on Bob instead of me. So every turn you have a chance to spend an action point to do a trade or negotiation, and then your other action points you can move the Minotaur.
Yeah, instead of the player whose go it is moving the Minotaur, they have to move it from an instruction from another player. So it'd have to be 3 or more players. So
Nice.
you'd have 2 enemies, and you'd have to say one of you has to pay. You have to pay me one of you has to pay me something, and I'll move the Minotaur according to your instructions. So you never move it yourself. It's always
Highest
somebody else.
payer wins.
But it's always
That's great.
But the player gets to pick, so that they might not pick the highest payer if the other player is winning. They might just say, "Bob, give me just 1 copper, and I will move it towards Jim." Anyway, or they might pretend not to do that. Say, "I'm open for suggestion." Bob gives me a copper. Jim gives me 10 gold, and I say, "Fuck you, Jim. I'm taking Bob's instruction." And again, an annoyingly good game.
I mean, you say that. There's literally no reason why we can't like now forget Earth and War.
But this is
and
the
just
fun
spend
bit, and then we've
all
got
our
to,
time.
the next bit's like the work bit where we've got to sketch it all out and stuff.
Well, I think like just to build further, you could have different squares in the labyrinth which give you different things. So obviously you'd have some kind of currency input on certain squares that you might be trying to get to. I'm also thinking some kind of cards that have a slightly randomized element. So maybe there's a card which you have to keep secret, which means that you do the opposite of whatever the highest bid is or something, or you have to ignore what happens with the negotiation step, or kind of some slight wild card which adds a strange element.
What would
to what
the
happens.
end goal be? I guess to destroy your opponents with the Minotaur, not being able to attack directly.
Yeah, it could either be elimination or maybe because that.
Oh, we seem to have lost Mr. John Power. Oh, is he coming back? Are you back?
Oh, my
there we go.
connection is
You're back.
unstable.
You're back.
Oh, hello, folks. What I was saying is it might be a bit punitive if people get kicked out. So it could be first to, let's say, 10 gold coins or whatever the currency is.
I mean, maybe getting attacked loses you money or something rather than getting kicked out.
Yes.
There is an annoying element in board games where you get kicked out and you just have to sort of sit out while everyone else finishes the game. Because no matter how good the game, it always loses a bit of impetus when people are removed.
Ooh,
especially games like Werewolf. Last time we played it, it lasted 45 minutes, and I was out in the first, I think, 2 minutes, and I had to sit because the rules of the game say that I had information that I was not allowed to communicate, so I could not say anything for 45 minutes. And I had to sit there while literally everyone else in the group continued to play the game, not being able to do anything or say anything.
Well, we won't have that in
No.
this game. I've had another build idea. I don't know what you think of this. So it could be, rather than necessarily a traditional labyrinth, it could be almost like a dungeon which gets deeper and deeper with better treasures the further in you go, but also there's bigger monsters the deeper in you go. So there could be hydras, sphinxes.
So maybe instead of moving a piece from one end of the grid to another, you take a piece off and add one from. Maybe there's like 4 sets of tiles. Yeah. And you add sort of a new tile from bag 1 to any point, and then a new tile from bag 2 later on in the game after a certain number of turns, because then the tiles would gradually get more dramatic as they go along.
I like that. I wouldn't want to throw out the sliding thing, so maybe there's a combo.
You would still slide them, but you would maybe you have a choice of taking the tile from one side to another, or you just pick a new tile, which would be more an extreme tile. Should we pick one of these ones? So what were they? There was Malta. This one. There was the Atom. I think we should definitely jot down some of these because they're all good ideas. The Atom periodic table one.
Atom alchemy.
And what was the first one?
We had a fish one.
Oil one.
Fish goo.
So my one will either be this or the Atoms. Probably this one because it's up on the screen. I did also really like the Atom one as a way of kind of learning chemistry. If you got it right, it could be a good.
It could be amazing if you got it right.
Yeah,
I think,
but it could also be really boring.
Knowledge,
like, guys, I've got this game based on the periodic table.
Yeah, there's just like no theme. It's literally just the periodic table and like a dice.
And the more facts of this you remember in 30 minutes, the more you win.
Let's keep this on the screen then, and shall we go over to our whiteboard?
Let's keep this, and I'll just move over to the whiteboard. I don't think we can keep those on screen, actually. I might have to minimize.
That's okay. I can have it to hand to refer to.
Yeah, if you unscreen share, I think. Yes. We're gonna have to get the things up, and we'll move over to the
Stop share.
Lazy Poet whiteboard. I shift this down here and across here, and if I press that, oh, we're very, very small. Stickers in the corner. I'll stick us down here so we are visible. Little peek behind the magician's curtain here. There we go. So, if I just drag that over there and I've just realised I should have done this all off screen with my new studio mode, but never mind. Here we go.
All right.
So this is our new thing. Let's close Microsoft Word. It is overheating my laptop. We're back to this. I remember this point last year when the weather got really hot and my laptop was struggling through every single stream that we did. I had to like fumigate the rooms of heat for half an hour before every stream. Okay.
So we have the Lazy Poet Board Game Improv logo there. Do we want to keep him, or should we?
Let's just erase all of this because we also don't have 60 minutes. We have about, let's say, well, we'll go till 8 and then we'll see where we are.
Where's our eraser?
We've got to get at least some of the basics of artwork. 3.
Okay, erase the text and the arrow.
Okay. Yeah,
let's get a pen.
Oh,
Okay,
right.
so let's think. What would we want to draw out?
I'm gonna move
Maybe
this.
the.
Oh, can't move that down. Never mind.
I suppose there's two ways we could approach this. We could do a decision tree type thing, or we could do like a components thing. Maybe we could do both.
Yeah, I haven't really thought this far ahead as to how we were actually going to lay it out. But... So
Maybe
what are the main ideas? We have the. We'll just jot some stuff down.
So we've got the board. I
not
think
his
is the main idea.
So.
I might just doodle a little bit. Of what,
Yeah.
We've got the brick
Start
pattern.
doodling what. Right.
Oh, my pen's out of battery. I just have to use my finger. Which is fine.
Little box. That's right.
So we've got a brick style labyrinth.
I'll just write Malta. Reminders that we're in Malta. Wonder what the
It's a
Maltese
key
flag looks
bit of
like.
information. And we've got our Minotaur.
And I don't know how to use this app.
We've got people, a lot of pawns. And we've got I suppose these labyrinth pieces, I'm just going to zoom in on one, might have wall kind of elements on them that kind of fit together.
Yeah, although. Where are we? Although I quite like the idea of wait, are those the pieces? There's like
So
the grid pieces.
I've drawn the grid sort of tiles that you would slide around, which are all brick shaped, and I've zoomed in on one to just kind of show it might have some gold coins on it.
I mean, should they be?
Might have a pickup card thingy.
I suppose it doesn't matter. I was going to say that there was one idea of it doesn't matter how far along you push them, so it could theoretically be in line with the two above and below it, but there's no real need for that, I think.
I see.
I guess
Maybe
it's
if
you
just
design it properly, but
in this particular instance, they're all offset the same amount, but they could be offset any amount.
In fact, that would be if they had variations of how offset they were. It would kind of
be more dynamic.
Be more dynamic is how far along you pushed it, so that you could create like a little tiny kind of route through yourself.
Maybe the things themselves could be made up of squares that you kind of rolled, so we get a bit more kind of bang for our buck in terms of squares. So I'm going to indicate on this very bad drawing like where the wall is, and then with the thick line, and then the less thick lines are the kind of the squares. So
okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. I guess squares is better than sort of an analog way of doing it.
Yeah, then you know when you've kind of like joined them up, and we'll have a dice.
Just, theoretically,
guess.
there's no. Well, so far there's no restriction on you pushing the whole row like the whole way along until only like these three are connected right at the end. But
Yeah,
it'd be quite interesting. You could make it really tough for everybody.
and I imagine there's a great big stack of these tiles, like you said earlier, from different like bags, maybe like so you can add to it.
Yeah,
more.
maybe either like a pile or yeah, a few different. It reminds me of there's a game called Oceans, which I've been meaning to play for ages, and I think halfway through the game you're playing with like, I think it's kind of like the bird one, but it's different, and you're sort of creating like a deck of fish and stuff, and halfway through the game you unlock the deep sea fish, which is like twice as many cards as the base deck, and they're all super powerful ones from the deep sea.
Yes. Okay. So I love that idea. We could have like deep labyrinth creatures and deep labyrinth.
Yeah, so I like the idea of kind of it takes you loads of games to see all the ones from the last bag, because you'll only start putting ones in from the last bag at the end of the game, and therefore you'll see fewer of them, and therefore it'll be a sort of, I've never seen all the ones from the last one. Maybe it's
Yeah.
basically just unlocking gameplay that I like.
So one of the key things we talked about was this negotiating element and bidding.
Oh yeah, what was it? How are we gonna? It's a negotiation, but for the movement of the Minotaur, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah. So maybe on your turn we could almost imagine some phases which we could sketch out. So maybe you have actions, whatever that is. Maybe that's moving actually. I don't know. We can I'll just chuck some ideas down. So maybe you move, then you negotiate, and then maybe move monster.
Or maybe you do them in any order. Like that's more. Because my initial instinct for this is to let people do stuff in any order. But there was a reason we didn't do that for the last game, and I can't remember what it was. Is it like easier to communicate what people have to do if they have to do it in a certain order? I'm not sure. Because it's strategically different if you are sort of whether you have to move your piece first, then move the monster, then shift the grid, or whether you can shift the grid first sometimes and move sometimes, then shift yourself along, and shift the monster along, opening like a different moves or something like that.
I think the only one that I might suggest has to precede another one is the negotiation before moving the monster.
Oh yeah.
So maybe we link those two. But yeah, we could have move board as independent of that. So you could move the board so that the monster's very close to your enemy, but they might not have realized it, and then they might have like not given much in the negotiation, and then you like, I'll have revenge. I'll move the Minotaur right next to you, which you didn't see.
The negotiation adds in a social element, which also almost acts as a randomizer, because it'll be different every time, every turn, or every game rather, how people behave and how much they annoy you and stuff, or what's been going on that day, or whether you're playing with like friends or girlfriends or people who've never played before, or professionals.
Good external element.
So you could almost use that as a dice roll for future games, like use people's own personalities as a randomizer for the game. Probably for a different game, but it's worth bearing in mind.
You might end up getting very consistent results though. Like if it's always what
if it has to be sort
a
of
certain person thinks.
Yeah, it wouldn't be like kind of what mood people are in to be attacked or something. It'd have to be something more abstract. The same way that like top tier scientific number randomizers use like the random movement of particles and stuff like that, because random stuff doesn't exist. Like,
could it be how many times has Jaffe gone to the loo in the last
like that.
3 hours?
Or you have to do like a little quiz question or something, and then the winner gets to pick a number or something like that.
Okay, yeah.
Or how many relationships are in the group, and then just like a load of like personal questions. You could combine it with like a personal learning exercise, like learn about your friends, like people's opinions and stuff. Anyway,
I think we need to get this in the Ludine maker.
yeah. I'll write it down while we.
So victory condition is get 10 treasure or something, or whatever. Get a certain amount, maybe 100. Treasure is not a good unit. Let's say gold coins.
Yeah, so the way we develop this is I would probably push later on to replace the gold coins with something different. But
Yeah,
at
it's
the moment, there's no.
Well, you know, what? Let me ask you, what might
yeah, that's
you
the
want
thing.
to
It would
replace
have
it
to
with?
be. My instinct would be to find something Maltesers.
Maltesers?
What I would usually do is like go around and like read 3 books on Malta, and then find something interesting and cultural, and then force that in, and then talk about it for ages. Or I'd probably do more than that. I'd probably read like 4 books, and then have like 10 pages of notes, and then we'd end up using 1 line of that at some point in the future.
I'm just going to say 100 Maltese gold coins.
Maltesers?
Yeah.
There's
I mean,
the book The Falcon's Malteser, which I was always obsessed with as a kid, written by Anthony Horowitz.
the Falcon's Malteser.
Yeah, I think it's a kid's parody of the Maltese Falcon movie. But it's
Okay.
like a kid who finds like a Malteser, and that leads him on like a treasure hunt around Europe or something like that.
Oh, wow.
It's good. It's a good kids book. That and Gruesome Grange, which is a book about a haunted school or something like that.
I wonder if this could be kind of treasure hunt round Europe. Maybe we're doing a Malta episode, but just to kind of build it, it could be like national treasure, but international treasure, where you go and
You could.
I don't know,
This is the Maltese one, and then
go to the Vatican,
yeah,
have to
what
find
we
the
could do
Pope's
is-
underpants.
we could do the idea of setting up the Patreon and releasing like a new board game each month, going around every European country and doing a themed board game for each one.
Vote now on which
Like,
country
yeah,
you want.
exactly.
Or
Like,
pledge now.
Like Sufjan Stevens had a thing for a while where he was going to make an album for every state in America. He did Come and Feel the Illinois for Illinois, and then I think he did one more, and then got bored and stopped. Which I can definitely see us doing if we went down that route.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we get 100 coins or similar as a
To
stand-in,
win.
perhaps. You end up doing this when you make games. You end up sorting sort of that will represent sort of the victory condition, whatever it ends up being. And later on, when you're game testing it, it might change to the extent that it might be killing people or getting 5 hits on a person or something like that.
One thing I'd like to develop further is what I've got an example of on the board there, a little question mark. So maybe we can expand on what kind of randomized cards we might have at the top there.
Ah, yeah, okay.
So
It's quite
what
good.
would be
Like,
an
if you
interesting-
do the drawing, and I'll do the sort of camera panning to the different bits.
Cool.
So it would be
Um,
stuff that affects gameplay usually. So you'd usually take the core gameplay elements. So it would be stuff like adding rules to the negotiations, like sort of a reverse card in Uno, or adding an extra move point, or an extra board move, or an extra space that you can move the Minotaur.
I like that. So let's take each of those extra.
And my instinct for this sort of thing is always to not put a limit on what players can, how many like players can collect, for example. So, which always ends up not being possible. But for instance, if you were collecting like monster moves throughout the game, and then right on the end you could say like, I've collected 20 different monster move point cards, so I'm going to spend them all now, and send the monster like to kill your enemies.
Rampaging through
Yeah, exactly.
the whole of the labyrinth.
But that's where game balancing comes in, because that's the same as min-maxing in an RPG, where you basically just max out just your strength at the expense of every other trait, which means you can do one-hit kills, but you're quite slow or something, which should ideally be possible in a game, but it sometimes makes it puts people in positions where the game's not built to deal with it. So usually games would say you can have no more than X number of cards in your hand at any one point, for this reason, so that you don't break the game, because it's impossible to game test in every situation, pretty much.
Yes. Yeah, we could see what the limits are of kind of how many
Mm.
cards you could hoard. Maybe we could make it a feature. Maybe you could have like the cards that you hoard become a bit of a bartering chip if we lean into the negotiation.
Yeah.
So I will give you my big stack of monster move tokens.
Yeah, you could. Yeah.
If you don't move the monster towards me. I don't know why I'd. I think I'm in a position of power. I'm not sure why I do that. But maybe you've got more gold than me, and so I want to receive your gold because I'm close to winning, and it's then you're, I guess, trying to put a value on the gold and what's a good price for a monster move chip. So
the danger of the negotiation, you'd have to find a way of balancing the negotiations so that you don't get to a point like in Catan or Monopoly, where you know who's ahead and who's going to win, and you stop negotiating with them at all, because that sort of undermines the negotiation system. Maybe like a blind negotiation might be possible. Maybe that could be a card actually. The next negotiation is a blind one where you put in your bids, kind of put your bid cards in a pile. For instance, like a 10 gold card or a 3 copper. They're shuffled, and then you accept one of them and reject one of them without knowing who it is. Is there a way to get around that?
I like it. I've added it to the top one. Maybe negotiation disruption is a general catch-all term for all the kind of weird twists we do on that negotiation Ludim, including specifically blind negotiation. Also, I think that one thing that Catan does well is it's got the hidden points, which you get in the victory. What are they called? Yeah. Those cards with like a library 1 point or whatever. So you can have hidden treasure. Maybe you can pick up a card that you can keep, which is something that is money that others don't know you have.
Yeah, and then you have the public ones that you have all 3 different types, don't you? Because you have the public kind of victory points that people know what you've got because you've got a certain number of roads. You have the hidden victory points for. Can you pick up victory points? I'm not sure. What you have some hidden ones that you can reveal at the end, and you have the kind of semi-public ones that you that switch hands, like the longest road and the others where people know who's got it, who's close to winning it, but they don't know how close to winning it they are because of what they've got in their hand, for instance. So that's great. They do it quite well in that sense. But it's still, you always end up doing like, John's winning, don't trade with him.
They always do, don't they? But yeah, that's good to explore. I guess the thing that, if I reflect on this, the thing that excites me the most is the idea of creating a big, crazy labyrinth with loads of monsters that's really, really deep, and like racing my friends to get to treasure that's like just out of reach, and having some dramatic kind of face-offs with monsters. Do the monsters just kill you, or can you attack the monsters at all?
Yeah, I think, but it would have to be sort of it would have to be an attack that's built into the game mode for the bits of the game we've already got. So maybe
you hurl a bit of board piece at
maybe you can use your gold to attack monsters, like so it's
pay them off.
Yeah, and you negotiate with them, something like that. So if it's a weak monster and you've got loads of gold, maybe it's a really easy bargain where you give them 1 and they disappear. But if you've got 10 gold and it's like a powerful monster, you have to negotiate, but then you're in the point of having to create like a negotiation engine for the game, which is doable. Or maybe another player acts as the monster or something like that. You could do.
I feel like the heart of the game is almost the intra-player negotiation, and so I'm wondering if we almost just have like a randomized or a table-based way the Minotaur monster stealing. So maybe for every gold you have, it takes 10%. No matter what you take, it takes like 20 or 50%.
Is that the monster or the Minotaur? Because in my mind, they're 2 different things. Like the monsters are sort of mini ones on these grids. Maybe when you beat them, you get gold or something like that. Maybe,
interesting.
And the Minotaur is sort of
the boss,
the big boss that you want to avoid at all costs because you can't beat because he's invincible. Do you remember Incredible Games with the Dark Knight thing?
Yes.
And the kids are on a grid. And I think the kids get to move 1 square forward or left and right each turn, and the Dark Knight can move any direction or something like that. Oh, the kids have to move forward and then sideways on alternate turns, and the Dark Knight can move in any direction, and he has to sort of destroy them with his beam.
Okay, I think I think Minotaur being the big boss is good. I think maybe some smaller monsters who take away less from you is good.
Yeah.
I think we might need quite a lot of peril. I want there to be lots of danger for it to be exciting. So like, I think all the monsters should threaten your gold balance.
Yeah. What
And
I really
maybe
like in games is attacks based on probability, but you can affect the probability. Like, for instance, it's not really possible to make it a cheap game like this, but a dice that you can change what's on each face. So you'd start off with a dice with 1 on every side, then you'd upgrade your dice to have a 2 on one side, and then so your probabilities of numbers slowly rise. So you could, for instance, upgrade your dice to have 1 on every side and a 6 on one side, so that you could have like a critical hit, but it's only a 1 in 6 chance. Or you could slowly upgrade to have a 2 on every side to do a smaller but consistent amount of damage. It doesn't really fit this game, but
it doesn't. A cheap way of doing that, though, if we did want to do it, is you could have a deck of cards where it's just numbers 1 to 6 as your like a default dice, and to upgrade it, you change it from a dice that goes, I don't know, 2 to 7. So there might be a way of weaving that in.
Or you have a deck of 6 cards for you have 6 attacks, and you roll a dice to say which attack happens, and you just upgrade the 6 cards in your hand. Would be an easy way of doing it.
Yeah.
That would be my immediate. Adds another series of elements to the thing. Unless you can only ever have 6 cards in your hand, and all the cards have one of these negotiation things and an attack on. So that maybe when you use it for negotiation, it gets burned, but then you obviously no longer have that attack in your hand, and you replace it with a 1 or similar.
So what I'm hearing is it's a bit like a worker placement where you've got a kind of finiteness to the actions that you have. It's a slightly different way of doing it, but yes, I like the idea of a meta game where you have to trade off. Do I want negotiation ability or attack ability or create board ability? So you could almost have like different heroes with different flavors, or like you get different skills as you explore the dungeon. That might be a good carrot for people to aim for. Like if you get to a certain square, you then get upgraded movement, get upgraded negotiation or something.
I mean, you could also combine it with a sort of Dominion style deck thing where you play you'd have to have like sort of 6 decks then, wouldn't you? You'd have to have like a 1 deck, a 2 deck, 3 deck, 4 deck, 5 deck, 6 deck, and then when you play your 5, you'd cycle through your 5s or something like that, which is again a bit complicated.
I feel like we've got a kind of a base game here that we could prototype and try, and I feel like there's an option certainly to add in more combat and deck building, but it's not necessary to the core of the game.
I think so. What have we decided on for combat for the monsters that you meet on the board?
So I think for now, I'm thinking they just take a bit of your gold. Maybe it's just like 5 gold pieces or something.
Okay.
And then the Minotaur takes a big chunk.
Yeah. Are they built into the board, or are they sort of tokens that you remove after they're defeated, or do they just sort of block the way? So they're more of a sort of gate rather than a combat experience.
I think I'm not sure. They can either stay put, or it could be that you can move any of them. So maybe I could choose to move a small monster towards you or the big monster. Maybe they're... Yeah.
The benefit of having them fixed is that they could be fixed on the
cards.
The cards, and therefore they, as you pick up the cards from the other decks later on, the darker decks, they'd get stronger with the maze.
There could also be monster spawn tokens on the board pieces. So maybe a black circle, and if you have 6 black circles, it's a Hydra. If you have 7 black circles, it's a Titan. If you have so you could have ratcheting up things there. But also you could want to have them fixed on the board, there might be benefits to that, but then they are not going to be able to move around.
I guess you'd have it on sort of thinking of production. You could just have monster tokens on the back of the money or something like that, or
Yeah,
and then you could even just have it so that you could pay your money to stick monsters down wherever you want, which would the power of the monster would therefore be linked to the how much they cost, because for a copper, for instance, would have a easy monster on the back which would cost 1 copper to defeat, and the 10 gold would have a powerful monster on the back that costs 10 gold to defeat, or similar.
I think there's
especially
let's
if we're paying
explore
them
that.
off, it makes sense to have money on the back, how much they cost to defeat.
monster economy.
So at this point, we'd go back and
Well,
see
a
what a
bit-
turn is like, I guess. But I mean, for an actual prototype, you'd have to muck up a load of these different tiles. I think the hardest bit of this would be balancing what the tiles look like. The
Yeah.
design of the tiles, because they'd have to be unique but also fit together quite easily.
Yeah, you wouldn't want too many closed holes or anything like
Yeah.
that. Although that might be a bit of a feature rather than a bug.
Yeah,
If you could
yeah.
trap your friend in a
Yeah,
labyrinth.
because
Maybe you could shield yourself from the monster.
yeah, exactly, yeah. And there'd always be a way out because your other players can also move the board as they want as well.
I think one thing that Labyrinth does well is that there's restrictions on which board pieces you can move. So it might be that we make it only every other row you can move, for example, or it's randomized which rows you can move, so that it's not too big an option space, because we don't want players to succumb to analysis paralysis too much. So
Yeah.
might keep that in mind.
So again,
One other big question, what do we call this game? We need a working title if we're going to pitch it in the Dungeons and Dragons
alright.
Den.
So they're all basically essentially you want a pun for a board game name, don't you?
Yep.
So you'd look, for instance, you'd look on Rhyme Zone, go to rhymezone.com, and you'd type in a load of associated words and hope something comes up. So for Earthen Wall, I can't remember what the titles for Earthen Wall were, because we wanted a word that was about war and also pottery and clay. And Earthen Wall, I think, was the only one we can think of. So Rhyme Zone does not like Malta, so that is not. Alter.
Alter.
Ego.
Oh, you're kind of altering the board.
But Malta, I guess, is a bit abstract as a thing. So I think you probably want something like labyrinth.
Maybe something about the monsters and the moving labyrinth.
Yeah.
Or something about the negotiation, like bartering beasts or something.
Yeah. So I've put in lab. I'm gonna try and find a pun of labyrinth, like Stabarinth.
Very good.
Labyrinth.
Something
that's
to
not
do with
really going
money,
anywhere.
buying.
Graberinth.
Graberinth. Graberinth is actually
yeah, Graberinth.
because you're grabbing treasure.
Yeah, it fits the kind of words, but it sounds too jolly and sort of like a bit assaulty, sexual
creepy,
assaulty,
yeah.
a bit trumpy. I'm gonna put rinth in, but rinth is not a word, so I don't think it'll give me any. Oh, plinth, labyrinth.
Labyrinth.
And I'm gonna put.
I feel like labyrinth might be too close an association. I wonder if maybe we could use maze,
Minotaur, Brinotaur.
dungeon.
Yeah, something like that. Or
Guess we could tweak the theme.
Shrinator. Yeah, when you've sort of got a decent game together, it's easier to change the theme than it is the game
Mechanics.
elements if you're not set on it. Whereas it took us quite a while actually, but we got set on World War One quite quickly. So and golems, so it's sort of
There was a lot of discussion that took us to that point, including like jousting snails and
oh yeah, it was going to be
robots.
based on medieval what they call marginalia for a while. Blinator. Airlinator.
Another good technique is to go to idiom-based websites and see what
idioms
they
are
can
good.
offer. So I might just go to an idiom. what's it called? Idioms.com or something. Ba-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da.
Center of the rays. Yeah, it isn't really amaze. What are the and hopefully like more unique elements would emerge, like the kind of the Malta connection might be a bit more solid.
Bull in a china shop. Cock
Yeah,
and bull
something like
story.
that, like a-
Bull-headed.
So now you could look up rhymes for China.
Yeah.
Not really anything.
Um,
Bull in vagina shop.
Shoot the bull.
Dina.
Shoot the breeze. Red rag to the bull. Okay, that's not. Maybe something to do with the negotiation. What's another word for that? Barter?
Barter, yeah.
Barter off. Buying and selling.
It's exceptionally hard this to do it on a time limit. So got rhymes for barter.
How about Bio-Wolf? No, that doesn't work. Like Beowulf, but buy a wolf, as in purchase. No, that's...
Not really Malta based, but Scandinavian. Martyr and barter. Barter, yeah, martyr. Cream of tartar. Barter for 10.
Yeah.
Barter for. So what's a rhyme for 10? Maybe. Hopefully, there's a word that rhymes with 10 that is immediately associable with a Minotaur. But barter for den.
We could like switch the game just to make the pun work
Yeah,
and
that's
change the
quite
bull to, I don't know, a hydra or something.
Yeah, completely possible. So, look, fire some idioms at me.
Okay. Give me a word to put in the idiom generator.
Monster. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We've got. Frankenstein. None of these are idioms. I'm very disappointed in this.
Well,
Like Green with Envy,
Beast.
Meth Monster, Mother Monster.
Beast from the. Oh, we need a word that is like maze. That sort of beast from the east. Beast from the.
Beast of Burden.
From the. Burden.
What's that? Yeah. What's that? Like bull god that you meant to give gold to begins with an M.
Moloch.
It's like a
Moloch.
Moloch.
Yeah, Moloch. Right. Okay, so it could just literally be called Moloch.
Yeah. Is that with MOL?
MOLOCH. Yeah. Bollock rhymes with it.
Bollocks.
Is there? I don't know any idioms about Moloch, but
Moloch is a pretty cool name.
Yeah,
I found
Moloch's
a great
cool name.
picture.
Yeah, that would. So the name would therefore sort of you can't really do sort of comical kids artwork with a name called Moloch. So you'd probably be aiming at sort of a Dungeons and Dragons audience with like epic sort of epic monsters. But I'm imagining sort of quite politically charged monsters like Moloch as sort of the embodiment of capitalism, and maybe like the powerful monsters later on, like a Hydra in the form of like fascism, because you lop one head off and loads more emerge afterwards.
So I've got a picture. I don't know if you can see that.
Yep, we can see that.
It's just taken from the Wikipedia page, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, so I remember in the there's a documentary about Howl, the poem, and there's a sequence in that where Moloch is represented as this giant embodiment of capitalism, a giant bull that controls a city or something like that.
Well, yeah, and also the idol Moloch with 7 chambers or chapels is what we have here, where you literally go inside Moloch.
Yeah.
So we could have Moloch as a kind of weird trans-dimensional like chapel house that you go inside and all the rooms change.
Yeah, and you'd have maybe 7 it might sort of some of these elements might get pared down with the cost of production, but you could have 7 different decks of tiles that get darker and darker as you go along up to the head or wherever the darkest bit is.
All right, I've just got to say, I think this is awesome.
It's
It is 8 o'clock.
good.
Can we bring Hannah in?
Yeah, I'll go and I'll put some ads on. Oh, we're not got kicked out of Zoom yet. Well, I'll go and I'll put some ads on for 2 minutes. I'll go collect Hannah, and she will take my seat, and John will pitch Moloch to her. So we'll be back in 2 minutes.
Butlin Day, where Butlin Skegness. It's a big holiday for kiddies with free swimming, boating, and games galore. Not to mention the big free rides. It's a big holiday for parents too, with freedom to enjoy carefree days and fabulous evenings of entertainment. It's a big holiday for everyone with everything to enjoy at Butlin's. And remember, no extras to pay.
There's lots of fun and shows and boats. There's Pleasureland and swimming, the zoo and stuff.
Southport, where folks take their kids for a holiday. British Midland to Jersey. This year, fly from East Midlands and Birmingham. Jersey for a great deal more holiday, more value. With British Midland low-cost excursion fares from only £77 return. So this year, fly British Midland to Jersey. You're there in next to no time.
My British Midland.
Sunspots. For further information, ring this number or fill in the coupon in the TV Times.
Butlins, Butlins, Butlins by the sea. There's a holiday that's full of fun for Mum and Dad and everyone at Butlins by the sea. Take it slow if you want to, see a show if you want to. Feel free to have the fun that's really free. You'll have a really wonderful time at Butlins by the sea.
You can swim if you want to, or dance if you want to. Have fun and be as gay as you can be.
Everything is here for a wonderful time at Butlins by the sea.
Whether you're with a party or if you're on your own, it's the perfect holiday
When you go to Butlins down by the seaside, there's the sea if you want it, cup of tea if you want it, or join in all the fun that's really free. You'll have a really wonderful time at Butlins by the sea.
With the Butlins All-In holiday, all your entertainments, all your amusements are free. Write for free coloured brochure to Butlins, Oxford Street, London. Don't forget, Butlins, Oxford Street.
And we are back.
Hello.
Hello. So, are we going to go straight in?
Yep.
All right,
I'm
so-
liking the Malta flag. I was talking to my colleague today and found out she's from Malta. So there you go. There's a
She would have been
theme.
useful.
That is central to this game. So
Okay.
that's a brilliant first impression to have. Hello, my name's John. I'm from Lazy Poets Games, and
Hi,
today
John.
I'm
I should say
for-
that Anna, you are on Dungeons and Dragons Den. We're pitching it here.
Okay.
and I'm looking for an investment of £1,000 in my new business idea, Moloch, which I'm working on with my colleague Peter, and we're looking for a 10%. We'd give away 10% of the business to you in exchange.
So you
So-
think this business is worth 10 grand?
That is correct.
Okay.
At least I think we are. This is a bargain deal because everybody is going to want to buy this because it literally endorses a cult of consuming things and buying things.
Not just a cult. We're
yeah,
really,
and a general
really into
cult.
Scientology.
As a capitalist, it will encourage people to be a capitalist like you are
Okay.
as a rich board game investor.
Okay.
Exactly. But let's take it back to basics. So what is this board game all about? What actually happens? So this is a game where you essentially explore a labyrinth, and in that labyrinth there are monsters and there's also treasure. And what you're trying to do is to get 100 Maltese gold coins before any of the other players. So that's what you're trying to do. But it's not your normal board game. So this is a game where you move along the board, but the board moves under you as well. So the whole board takes place on these tiles. And Peter, maybe you can zoom over to where we've got the little grid of brick-like tiles. So on those little pieces are all sorts of different things. There's walls, there's squares, there's things that make monsters appear, there's little question mark cards, and there's gold coins as well. So all sorts of exciting things on every one of those unique cards. And over time the board evolves and you get new cards and you find new monsters and new treasures. So that's part of what happens in the game. But what do you actually do on your turn? How does it work? Well, on your turn, you have 4 main things you can do. You can choose to move the board by shifting a whole row along, much like another game you may know and love called Labyrinth, moving tiles around by sliding them. You can also move yourself along the board. We think with a dice, roll and move, but that's what we think. And also there's the key USP to this whole game, which is this amazing unique feature where you can negotiate with your fellow players as to what happens with the monster. Allow me to explain. So let's suppose me and Peter are playing, and let's suppose it's your turn, Hannah. You can then hold an auction as to where you move the monster between myself and Peter, and whoever's willing to pay you the most money might be the person who you decide to move the monster away from. So if Peter can't give you as much money, he might be getting the ball.
You can never move the monster according to what you want. You have to follow another player's instructions.
Okay.
So we're not quite sure what the bidding process is, but for instance, I would say I'll give you 2 Maltese copper for you to move it closer to John, up to this spot here, and John might counter that offer with I'll give you 10 gold to move it this way. And there's no obligation for you to pick either or, but hopefully that negotiation will go throughout the game. So if you want money, you take the money, and if you want to get it nearer John because he's winning, you'd do that and also take his money.
So lots of interesting.
Sorry, so I could take John's 10 gold and then still move it closer to him. Okay. Okay.
So it might be a blind bidding process, or it might be an open bidding process, but it might depend on which cards you'll have.
Okay.
It might be like Catan, where you say, "Oh, I'll give you 10 gold to swap it for something," or it might be sort of like buying a house where you get gazumped repeatedly and you don't know who's done it.
Okay.
So that is the basic ideas. We can go over the details when we have our follow-up meetings after. I'm sure you've invested the £1,000 and we've written down exactly what all those rules are. But yes, it is called Moloch, which is a deity that represents capitalism. And you can see from that image there that there's kind of these different chambers inside the body of Moloch, and that might be representation of the different chambers you'll be exploring with your other treasure hunters in this game.
The idea was you'd have a grid of these brick-shaped tiles. You'd take one from one end and then replace it. You'd put it in a bag, pick up another block from the next bag over, which would have bigger monsters and bigger rewards on it, and slide it on any end. However you want, really. You could make a big spike of a long chain of bricks on one row, or you can make it a square. And as you go on, you'd unlock 7 different decks of powerful tiles, which would contain powerful monsters and cards and enemies.
And I guess the other big thing to explain is that those question marks that you can land on, there's all sorts of things, a bit like a community chest in Monopoly. It can mean all sorts of different rules that either give you points, change the rules a little bit, give you the ability to move the board in a different way. So yeah, that's kind of another aspect to it. So hopefully lots of rich different ways, and it's not the same each time you play it. And that's it. Yeah, as I say, looking for £1,000 for 10% of the business. If you have any questions or you'd like to take a look, just let us know.
And,
Okay.
You of course have a personal connection to Malta because your friend who you're talking to earlier is from Malta. So.
Okay, so I get the impression that I don't want the monster near me. Why?
Great
What does
question.
it do?
Well, in your quest to get all that gold coins, the monster might hold you back because whenever the monster touches you or is in the same square as you, it takes away some of your gold.
Okay.
To defeat the monsters or to get past them, you pay them off essentially because it's
Okay.
capitalism. So potentially each money token, each Maltese money token, for instance, a copper would have a really easy monster on the back, and a 10 gold would have a Hydra on the back, and you'd have to spend that much to get past it and to defeat it.
Okay. How does the game end?
First person to get 100 gold Maltese pieces.
Okay.
So that will be by going into the dungeon and going to the various squares with gold on, dodging past the Minotaurs, and hopefully sending the monster to your friends instead of to you, and hopefully getting paid enough to get the 100 before the other players.
And the main Minotaur, the Moloch figure, is like the Dark Knight in Incredible Games, where you cannot destroy it. So it's one.
Okay.
So if it gets near you, you want to get away because it would otherwise just keep attacking you until you have run out of gold.
Okay. So the only bad thing that can happen to you is so the monster could land on you, or you could pay somebody off and then the monster lands on you. Either way, there's no like.
You can't die.
You can't just and you can't just lose a load of money for no good reason. Like you turn over a card that just says tax.
Probably not. Although
Okay.
if it goes down the route of being very capitalist focused, maybe it won't be tax. It'll be sort of you have to. A tech startup needs your money, so you have to pay this much money.
Okay.
But probably not.
No, it sounds very interesting. Where did you get the idea for the monster from Moloch?
We're desperately
Malachi.
searching for a name of the game.
Okay.
Like, it was a Minotaur until the last 10 minutes of the 5 minutes of the stream.
What's a
And
bit
then
like a
everything
Minotaur?
fit together. Although, I mean, I've been quite obsessed with mythology for quite a while, so we know quite a bit about it.
I was going to say there's a theme. Lazy Poet Games has a theme of the.
It has a theme where we try to make John a socialist over the course.
I meant like the obscure monster figures and. Like,
Well, the idea was that
mythology,
there'll be a
occult-
general political theme to it, so that, for instance, the Moloch would represent capitalism, perhaps the Hydra would represent fascism, because when you chop one head off, two more appear.
And your player, I suppose you don't have player pieces.
Yeah, you would, because you'd have to
you
you'd
do.
move
Oh, right,
around
okay. So
there.
they'd be like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and.
They certainly could be.
Perhaps.
Yeah. And they just have,
Whatever our
yeah.
investor wants to
Yeah.
put in the game, we will go with.
We're happy to sponsor them if you've got like we could have each player sponsored by a different company. So you have like the Shell player, the Tesla player.
An Amazonian.
Yeah.
And why Malta?
Do you want the real answer or the propaganda answer?
Because I would think that like
Shall I share my screen for a second, Peter? This might be a great reveal for Hannah.
okay.
Yeah.
You
So
were
we'll go back
actually in on my
to-
meeting earlier when I was talking to you.
So, welcome. Can you see this?
No, not yet. Hold on.
Hang on. There we go. Is that? Oh, hang on. I'm on the wrong window. What? Oh no, what have I done? This won't happen during the
Just
actual.
building the tension.
There we go.
Okay.
Are we live?
We're live
Yep.
and we're full screen.
Welcome to the Lazy Poet Game Maker, where we have randomly generated, with the power of Excel, a game from a few random ideas that we just had kicking around. So we had 3 random collections of ideas, and this was the one that we liked and ran with. So yeah, that is behind the scenes of how we got to our game.
And
So
if you watch
no
the
better
stream from
reason
the beginning,
than
you'll
that.
see the alternate games that we rejected for not being as good. Although
Okay.
they also were very good.
Is the country so the country of Malta is therefore stuck in stone, and I
It was
can't change
Portugal,
it?
and we accidentally refreshed the page and it changed to Malta.
Okay. So I would have
Yeah.
thought that like Monaco might have been a better fit.
It's tangentially related to
but-
Malta because we did Google Malta and it has a load of famous underground crypts and stuff, which we then
Actually, saying that,
placed the Minotaur into.
one of the conversations I had this morning was about how at the start of the crisis, when they were delaying or postponing or cancelling festivals in mainland Europe, Malta was like, yeah, no, just have them here instead, and then had immediately had to shut its borders at a very quick point in time in April when things had just got out of hand. So actually, it's quite capitalist, and you did not realise that. So
everything comes together.
Okay.
Bang on team. So
So
there we
you
have
Right,
it.
so now we have to. I've never seen Dragon's Den or Shark Tank.
I think
or...
you
just say,
you
yeah, I'll
hand us the
definitely
cash personally. You go and get the cash, give it to me.
I believe that I have to negotiate and say I will give you.
You have to
I
do
want
what? You have to
20%.
negotiate.
I want 20% for 5%. Oh no, 20. I will give you 20.
20% for 5%. That sounds great. I'll have 20% of your business in exchange for 5% of this one. Yes, please.
I'll give you 1 copper to move the Moloch.
Yeah. Okay. We'll talk about this offline. Yeah.
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 Cool. Yeah. So that's pretty much it. That
that's,
was our Lazy Poet game making night. I hope you all enjoyed it, viewers.
Yeah.
That's it from us.
Well, it works quite well. Like annoyingly well, because we're going to have to keep doing it now because it seems very productive. So
Maybe start making this game. No, actually, maybe finish your first game, and then
All right, Mom.
before you have more ideas.
So it's a goodbye from Hannah, and it's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from John. Say goodbye, John.
Doodles.
Bye, John.